I was standing in the hospital hallway where the sterile scent of antiseptic was so strong, it felt like a heavy blanket in the air. The bone marrow match report I was holding was just a single thin sheet of paper, yet it felt impossibly heavy in my hand. The sharp, agonizing memory of a thick needle piercing my lower back over and over again in my previous life seemed to resurface, sending a phantom ache through my entire body. I managed a faint smile. Then, right there in front of the doctor, whose face was a mask of disbelief, I methodically tore the report that decided the fate of the Vance family into tiny, irreparable pieces and let them flutter into the trash can. Without a second thought, I took out my phone, swiftly blocked the hospital's number, and deleted it from my contacts. My finger then scrolled to another number, one belonging to a name I had only ever read about in financial news publications in my past life, someone I would have never had the courage to contact before. It was Julian Croft, the heir to the Croft Corporation and the known rival of the Vances, the very man they had once schemed against, leaving him ruined and blind. The call connected almost right away. The other end of the line was completely silent. I didn't bother with pleasantries. "Mr. Croft," I began, my voice steady, "my name is Alara. I am Liam Vance's fiancé. I am in possession of the core project data for Vance Industries for the next 3 quarters, which includes information on their most critical vulnerabilities. I would like to propose a deal." His breathing on the other end remained even and unhurried, as if he had no real interest in this potentially revolutionary information. "What kind of deal are you proposing?" he asked. "Marry me," I said, speaking each word with careful and deliberate clarity. "I will become your wife, and these trade secrets will serve as my dowry. I have only one condition in return. I need your protection and access to your resources. I want the entire Vance family to be completely and utterly destroyed." The line fell silent for a good 30 seconds, a period so long that I started to think he might just hang up, dismissing me as some unhinged person. Finally, his voice came through again. "City Hall, in half an hour." Everything that followed happened with a cool and detached efficiency. We didn't exchange a single word of small talk. It was only when I was holding the crisp official marriage certificate in my hand that the profound reality of my rebirth, this second chance I had been given, finally started to feel real. That same afternoon, a call came through from Liam Vance. His voice was more enraged than I had ever heard it. "Alara, where in the world are you? We found a match for my father, so what is your problem? The hospital told us they can't get in touch with you." I replied calmly, "Oh, I've been busy. I got married today." He used my actions to paint a specific picture to the public, a story of a devoted son betrayed by a heartless fiancé. He spoke to the media, his voice filled with feigned sorrow. To get back at me, she would ignore a man's life. "I want to apologize to everyone on behalf of my father, and for having ever loved such a treacherous woman." The narrative worked beautifully. His portrayal of a dedicated man wronged by a cruel partner went viral online almost instantly. I became a public symbol of cold-blooded cruelty and betrayal. I looked at the news reports on my phone and calmly stored away the hatred I felt. This was just the first item on my long list of revenge. The Croft estate was as imposing and somber as a deep, dark well. The moment I stepped through the main gates, I could feel an invisible weight, a pressure settling around me. A butler, a man well into his 50s, stopped me. His demeanor was respectful, but his eyes were wary, his guard clearly up. "Miss Alara, the master is currently waiting for you in his study. I will have your luggage disinfected and then sent up to a guest room." I simply nodded, not saying a word, and walked directly towards the study. Julian Croft was seated behind a large, imposing desk, his face partially obscured by a pair of dark sunglasses. Even with the glasses hiding his eyes, I could feel his intense, scrutinizing gaze on me. He didn't speak for a long time, and the silence in the room was heavy and intimidating. My husband from my past life, Liam Vance, had never projected this kind of powerful presence. After what felt like an eternity, he finally broke the silence. "The vulnerabilities within the Vance Industries projects. I want to see the details." I didn't answer him right away. Instead, I walked closer, stopping just in front of his desk. "Mr. Croft," I said, my voice quiet. Have you been experiencing high intraocular pressure recently? Perhaps accompanied by intermittent migraines and feelings of nausea? His face, still hidden behind the sunglasses, turned toward me. I couldn't discern his expression, but I knew that my question had made him even more guarded. What are you trying to imply? These are fairly typical complications that can occur after nerve damage to the eyes, I explained. Medication can only offer temporary relief. In my past life, a friend of mine also underwent a bone marrow transplant and unfortunately suffered from similar after effects. I casually repurposed my own past suffering into a story about a friend. He later discovered that by gently pressing the acupressure points around the orbital bone combined with a warm compress, he could effectively relieve the nerve pain. Would you be willing to give it a try? Julian remained silent. The butler immediately stepped forward to reprimand me. Miss Alara, the master's health is managed by a world-class medical team. It does not require your concern. I ignored the butler, keeping my focus on Julian. But that world-class team hasn't been able to fix your eyes, have they? My method carries absolutely no risk and will only take 5 minutes of your time. Another long silence stretched between us. Finally, he gave a very slight, almost imperceptible nod. I walked around the large desk and stood behind his chair. Drawing on the memories of the countless times I had worked to ease my own pain, I accurately located the necessary pressure points around his eyes. The moment my fingertips made contact with his skin, his entire body tensed up. I paid it no mind, simply applying the perfect amount of pressure and beginning a slow, methodical massage. 5 minutes later, I pulled my hands back. How do you feel? He didn't answer me directly. He just waved his hand, and the butler, understanding the silent command, immediately excused himself from the room. Now it was just the two of us alone in the vast study. I will provide you with the resources you requested, he said finally. You may use the study downstairs. What you are able to find is entirely up to you. This was his first real gesture of trust toward me. That night, using the limited access he had granted me, I anonymously packaged the core code vulnerability of an ALT project from Starlight Tech, a subsidiary of Vance Industries, and sent it to several of the most aggressive business journals in the country. In my past life, this very vulnerability had ended up costing the Vance family nearly $1 billion yuan. The news broke the following morning. Starlight Tech's stock plummeted the moment the market opened, sending waves of panic through the financial world. Liam's first call went straight to his precious Sophia, but he was unaware that I had already bugged his phone and was listening to their every word. Sophia, don't worry, he said, trying to sound reassuring. This little thing won't affect us. It has to be that blind fool Julian Croft. Does he really think he can take me down with these petty tricks? He's so naive. On the other end of the line, Sophia soothed him in her characteristically pure and gentle voice. Liam, don't be angry. I know you can handle it, but what about Alara? Now that she's married into that family, do you think she'll tell them all of our secrets? Her? What could she possibly know? Liam's voice was dripping with contempt. She's just a foolish woman who only knows how to go shopping. I just used her to annoy Julian Croft. She's a useless pawn in the Croft family now. Nobody there cares about her. Sophia, you're the one who is important. Take care of yourself. My father still needs you. Listening to their conversation, I quietly turned off my phone's screen. A useless pawn. That was perfect. Predators always love it when their prey lets down its guard. Just as I had anticipated, Mr. Vance's condition took a dramatic turn for the worse a few days later, throwing the entire family into a state of chaos. I was kind enough to send them a copy of Sophia's compatibility report. Instantly, all of the Vance family's hopes became pinned on her. Soon, news began to spread throughout high society. The Vances were hosting a grand charity gala to thank the community for its support and to publicly honor the great bone marrow donor, Miss Sophia. The moment I saw the news, I understood their strategy. They were constructing a moral altar, intending to force Sophia onto it and pressure her into donating. It was a perfect little drama of sacrificing for the sake of love. I immediately got in touch with the people Julian had assigned to me and instructed them to hype up the story even more. The headline read, City's Angel to donate marrow again for love. Vance Industries heir pledges his life in return. I wanted this story to be known by everyone in the city, to have every camera and microphone aimed directly at Sophia's pure, innocent face. Julian's resources were indeed formidable. Overnight, Sophia became the talk of the town, a living saint willing to sacrifice her own health for the man she loved. On the night of the gala, I made a grand entrance as Julian Croft's wife. My appearance immediately drew everyone's attention. The glares from Liam and his mother felt like physical knives scraping against my skin. "You have the nerve to show your face here," Mrs. Vance hissed through clenched teeth. "Ilara, you have brought utter disgrace to our family. Look at Sophia, and then look at yourself. You aren't even worthy of being compared to her." I ignored her completely and walked straight over to a pale, forced smiling Sophia. "Miss Sophia, congratulations! You'll soon be the next Mrs. Vance." I raised my champagne glass, my smile gentle. "The entire city is praising you, calling you an angel. It's so touching. Unlike me, who is just a selfish mortal." Sophia's face turned even whiter. She gripped Liam's arm, her knuckles turning white from the force of her grip. "Ilara, please don't say that. I just did what I felt I had to do." Liam pulled her into his arms, glaring at me. "Ilara, that's enough. Sophia still hasn't recovered yet, so don't try to provoke her. Get out of here." The show was about to begin. On stage, Liam gave an emotional speech, thanking Sophia for her great sacrifice. Under the bright spotlight, countless cameras were focused on her. She was trapped on a pedestal from which she could not climb down. To refuse now would be to expose herself as a fraud, to let a man die. With tears welling in her eyes, amidst a sea of praise and thunderous applause, she nodded emotionally. I am willing." The crowd erupted in cheers. However, the true climax of the evening came during the physical examination. To demonstrate the authenticity of the situation, the Vances had invited notaries and a medical team to perform a preliminary checkup on Sophia right there on the spot. The results came back quickly. The doctor, holding the report, announced with a troubled expression on his face, "I'm sorry, Mr. Vance, but according to our preliminary examination, Miss Sophia's vitals, especially her hematopoietic stem cell activity, do not meet the necessary criteria for donation. A forced donation would not only be useless to the patient, but would also seriously endanger Miss Sophia's life." The entire venue fell silent. The crowd's admiring gazes slowly turned to confusion, and then to suspicion. A person who wasn't even eligible to donate was putting on this elaborate public spectacle. The Vances were publicly humiliated, their grand gesture having turned into a colossal joke. After the gala, I saw them in a corner of the parking lot. For the first time, Liam forcefully shoved Sophia's hand away from him. "Why didn't you tell me that your body couldn't handle it? Now our whole family is a laughingstock." I thought I could, Liam," Sophia sobbed, tears streaming down her face. "I really wanted to save your father." But once that crack of doubt had appeared, it could never be mended. The Vance family's public farce was a pleasant prelude to my symphony of revenge, but they weren't finished yet. Desperation often turns people into beasts. A week later, I was reading in the Croft family garden when I felt a sharp, sudden pain in the back of my neck, and then everything went black. I don't know how much time had passed, but when I woke up, the acrid smell of disinfectant filled my nostrils, making me feel nauseous. I found myself lying on a cold operating table, my wrists and ankles tightly bound with thick leather straps. I couldn't move an inch. Bright, shadowless lamps above blinded me. Several doctors in white coats and masks surrounded the table, their eyes looking down at me as if I were a lifeless object rather than a person. The operating room door opened, and Liam and his mother walked in. The compassionate mask Liam wore for the media was gone, replaced by a venomous, almost crazed expression. And my former mother-in-law, the socialite who was always so meticulously concerned with her appearance, now looked utterly deranged. "You're awake, you bitch," she snarled. She strode forward and slapped me hard across the face. "Did you really think that marrying that blind man would solve all of your problems? Let me tell you, you were born a Vance and you will die a Vance. Your life belongs to us." I didn't struggle, I just looked at Liam. He slowly approached, a document in his hand, which he then threw in my face. It was my original bone marrow match report. They had somehow found it through illegal means. "Ilara," he said, his voice soft, but it chilled me more than any shout could have. "I never imagined that you were lying to us from the very beginning. It turns out that the one person who could save my father was you all along." He felt not a single shred of guilt, only a burning fury at my deception. "You're really something else. You played all of us, watched us beg Sophia like fools, watched the Vance family become the laughingstock of the entire city. You must be very proud of yourself, aren't you?" I stared at him, saying nothing. He leaned down, whispering in my ear at a volume that only the two of us could hear. "You wanted revenge, didn't you? Well, now, I'm giving you that chance." He straightened up and ordered the doctors beside him. "Prepare for a live extraction." The doctors didn't hesitate for a second, picking up the thick, long puncture needles they had prepared. My heart seized in my chest. The memory of that agonizing, repeated piercing from my past life washed over me like a tidal wave. I began to struggle violently, the leather straps cutting bloody lines into my wrists. "No, you can't!" Liam grabbed my shoulders, his grip strong enough to crush my bones. His face was twisted with a cruel, sadistic pleasure. "Can't we? Of course we can, Ilara. This is the only way for you to atone, as a daughter-in-law of the Vance family." He turned to his mother and the doctors as if announcing a sacred offering. "Her existence, her value from this day forward is to be my father's medicine. Using her marrow to save my father's life is her natural duty. It is her salvation." A doctor holding a needle that glinted coldly under the bright light aimed for my lower back. I felt the cold metal touch my skin and could clearly sense the sharp tip searching for the space between my bones. Despair like a suffocating net wrapped tightly around me. My existence was just a dose of medicine. Just as the needle was about to pierce my skin, a loud bang echoed through the room as the heavy operating room door was kicked open from the outside. Wood splinters and fragments of the door flew everywhere, shocking everyone present. A tall figure stood silhouetted against the light in the doorway. It was Julian Croft. The signature sunglasses were gone. His dark eyes were as sharp as an eagle's, showing no trace of blindness whatsoever. Behind him, a dozen bodyguards in black suits swiftly moved to take control of the entire room. The expression on Liam's face shifted from stunned to shocked, and finally to incredulous fear. Your eyes." Julian ignored him completely. He walked straight to my side, took off his suit jacket, and draped it over me, covering my exposed skin. His fingertips were cool, but his movements were gentle as he undid the straps on my wrists. "Don't be afraid," he said softly. "I'm here." Mrs. Vance was the first to react, screaming like a madwoman. "Julian Croft, this is a Vance family matter. What right do you have to barge in here? Someone, get him out of here." But not a single bodyguard listened to her. The doctors who had been involved in the procedure had already collapsed to the floor in fear. Liam tried to feign composure, his voice a weak imitation of a roar. "Julian Croft, this is breaking and entering. It's kidnapping. I'm calling the police." "The police?" Julian finally turned his gaze to him, a hint of pity in his eyes. "Go ahead, call them. But before they get here, why don't you take a look at this?" He raised his hand and snapped his fingers. In the corner of the room, a smoke detector that had seemed perfectly ordinary suddenly glowed with a small red light. It was a flawlessly disguised miniature camera. Then, Julian's assistant stepped forward with a tablet. On the screen was a live broadcast streaming to the entire internet. The feed showed everything that had just happened in this operating room, from me being tied to the table, to Mrs. Vance's arrogant slap, to Liam's shameless speech about atonement and medicine, and the horrifying image of the doctor raising the needle. Every single second was broadcast crystal clear to millions of viewers. The live chat was exploding. Is this real? Kidnapping his ex-fiancé to forcibly extract bone marrow? Is that Liam Vance from Vance Industries? Oh my God, you can never judge a book by its cover. This is disgusting. What a monster. Is he even human? That line, "Your value is to be my father's medicine." I think I'm going to be sick. Call the police. Someone has to call the police. This is aggravated assault, attempted murder. Public opinion exploded instantly. Liam stared at the frantic scroll of comments on the tablet, the color draining completely from his face. He staggered back a step, his lips trembling, unable to form a single coherent word. His mother's eyes rolled back in her head, and she fainted on the spot. Julian's bodyguards detained Liam and the doctors. The evidence was irrefutable. Their crimes were undeniable. Julian walked up to Liam, looking down at the utterly defeated man. Liam, did you really think I cared about your trade secrets? I married her just to wait for this day, for a chance to nail you and the entire Vance family to a pillar of shame once and for all. The police are on their way. Game over. The sound of sirens grew closer, piercing the silence of this absurd drama. Julian pulled his jacket tighter around my shoulders, the warmth shielding me from the cold glare of the surgical lights. He didn't ask me a single question, just showed me with his actions that it was all over. Liam crumpled to the floor as if his bones had been removed. He looked at me, then at Julian, his mouth opening and closing without a sound. Fear had seized his throat. The police rushed in, moving with high efficiency to secure the scene, take the suspects into custody, and collect evidence. The fainted socialite, my former mother-in-law, was dragged out by two female officers like a sack of garbage. Through it all, I didn't say a single word. It wasn't until Liam was handcuffed and about to be led away that he seemed to snap back to reality, roaring at me like a madman. Ilara, you venomous bitch! You set this trap just to get revenge on me! You ruined me! You ruined the Vance family! I looked at him and suddenly found the situation almost funny. A trap, Mr. Vance? Weren't you the one holding the butcher's knife from the very beginning? My words left him speechless, his face turning beet red. I was trying to save my father. What did I do wrong? It was you. You betrayed me first. You refused to donate. And because I refused, you kidnapped me? I asked. My voice wasn't loud, but it silenced the entire room. Liam, is the concept of a person completely absent from your logic? He was led away, his hate-filled eyes fixed on me until he was out of sight. In the next 24 hours, the world turned upside down. The news, Vance Industries heir kidnapped ex-fiancé for forced bone marrow extraction, detonated like a nuclear bomb across the internet. Vance Industries stock didn't last a second after the market opened before trading was halted. Partners issued termination notices overnight, banks called in their loans, and suppliers showed up demanding immediate payment. A business empire crumbled in the morning sun. I stayed in a guest room at the Croft estate, watching the news unfold on my phone, feeling a profound sense of peace. Julian's assistant knocked and entered, handing me a file. Miss Ilara, this is the visitation log for Liam Vance from the detention center. Mr. Croft thought you might want to see it. I opened the file. It was a record of his lawyer's visit. The lawyer had told him that the Vance family was finished completely and utterly. Liam had roared and cursed, blaming everything on me. He had completely lost control, screaming that he would kill me, and was finally given a sedative by force. I closed the file, feeling no sense of triumph, only the weariness of closure. Just then, my phone rang. It was an unknown number. I answered, and a venomous voice came through. My former mother-in-law. She had somehow been released on bail. Ilara, you little bitch. Are you happy now? You're proud of yourself for ruining our family, aren't you? I said nothing, just listened quietly. Let me tell you, don't celebrate too soon. You think you're safe hiding in the Croft estate? Your parents are still back in their small town, right? That road gets a lot of drunk truck drivers at night. What if one of them has brake failure, tisk-tisk? She used the most vicious words to paint a picture of my parents' bloody demise. How about it? Scared now? Go and drop the charges right now, or you can get ready to collect your parents' bodies. I gripped the phone, a cold sweat breaking out on my back. This was their last desperate move, and the one that hit my weakest point. Just as I was about to speak, Julian, who was beside me, took my phone and put it on speaker. Then, he used my phone to dial another number. When the call connected, he said only one thing: play the recording for him. The next second, every single one of my ex-mother-in-law's venomous, threatening words was played back through my phone's earpiece. On the other end of the line, she instantly went silent. Adrian spoke calmly into my phone. Ma'am, I forgot to tell you. An hour before you called, My people had already submitted the full recording of what you just said to the police as new evidence of threat, intimidation, and obstruction of justice. Now you can wait to be arrested a second time. The courtroom was solemn. I sat at the plaintiff's table, flanked by the nation's top legal team, hired for me by Julian. Across from me, Liam wore a prison uniform. In just a few days, he looked as if all his vitality had been drained, gaunt, and utterly devoid of his former arrogance. His mother had completely lost her mind after her second arrest and was deemed unfit to stand trial. I didn't look at him. My gaze was fixed on the judge. My lawyer was calmly and clearly stating my demands. My client, Ilara, formally files suit against Liam Vance for kidnapping and attempted aggravated assault. The evidence is irrefutable, and we request that the court sentence him to the fullest extent of the law. Liam's defense attorney stood up, attempting a final desperate defense. Objection. My client acted irrationally while his father was critically ill and he was under extreme emotional distress. His motive was to save his father, which is understandable. My lawyer cut him off. Understandable? Forgive me. But kidnapping a woman, taking her to a private operating room, tying her to a table, and preparing to perform a live bone marrow extraction without anesthesia, which part of that is understandable? The defense attorney's face turned red. The evidence was ironclad. Liam completely broke down. He stopped trying to defend himself and just knelt on the floor, letting out a desperate, animalistic groan. The final verdict was no surprise. Liam Vance was found guilty of kidnapping and attempted aggravated assault. The charges were combined, and he was sentenced to 15 years in prison. All Vance family assets were frozen and put up for public auction. After all debts were cleared, the remaining $3.7 billion would be paid to me in damages. The moment the judge announced the sentence, I didn't smile. I just stood up and walked over to Liam, who was now a boneless heap on the floor. I knelt down and said in a voice only we could hear, "Liam, you always said my only value was to be your father's medicine. Now, I've used everything your family had to buy my life back. From now on, we owe each other nothing. You can stay in this prison and properly atone for your sins." The trial of the Vance family was over, but Sophia's drama was just beginning. She was even more foolish than I'd imagined. After the Vances went down, her first thought wasn't to distance herself, but to flee with the money she'd wheedled out of Liam over the years, probably thinking it was enough to live lavishly for the rest of her life. Unfortunately for her, she was intercepted at the airport by police who were already waiting. The list of her crimes was longer than I'd thought: fraud, defamation, and conspiracy to commit kidnapping. It turned out Sophia knew about the plan to take me to that private surgical room from the very beginning, and had even provided them with the contact for the illegal clinic. She naively thought that if I was dead or disabled, she could secure her position as Mrs. Vance forever. In court, she cried a river of tears, putting on her usual pitiful act. I didn't know anything. Liam forced me. I just loved him so much, I believed everything he said. She tried to pin all the blame on Liam, casting herself as an innocent girl blinded by love. Your Honor, I even wanted to donate my bone marrow for his father. I'm a good person. I really am. Please believe me. Her performance was convincing, but the audience had changed. The media Julian brought in weren't the hacks the Vances could buy off. They dug into Sophia's past and uncovered a bombshell. She was no inspirational girl from a poor family, but a professional gold digger. This wasn't her first time. Before she met Liam, she had used similar scripts of sacrificing for my father and sacrificing for love to swindle money and sympathy from multiple wealthy men. One of them had even been tricked into bankruptcy and committed suicide. Case after case, the evidence was irrefutable. Her so-called kindness was nothing but carefully packaged, vicious self-interest. When this evidence was presented in court, Sophia was dumbstruck. She stopped crying and just sat there in the defendant's box, her pretty face showing a blank, dazed expression for the first time. In the end, with multiple convictions, she was sentenced to 10 years in prison. This outcome was even more satisfying to me than Liam's because I knew that for someone like Sophia, who lived on her beauty and the adoration of others, prison was the true hell. The media coverage was relentless. An angel's fall unmasking the two faces of gold digger Sophia, and from high society darling to prisoner, how many did she deceive? The articles included a photo of her in prison, wearing a drab uniform, her hair cut into a ragged bob. Without her exquisite makeup, her sallow skin and deep dark circles were exposed. She had lost all her glamour, stripped of her beautiful facade, living a miserable existence in a place without sunlight. It was the starkest possible contrast to the most beautiful angel Liam had cherished and the media had praised. I closed the news page. The $3.7 billion in compensation had already been deposited into my account. A string of cold numbers. I looked at it for a long time, then called Julian's assistant. Help me set up a foundation. What should we name it? Let's call it Rebirth. I poured half of the compensation I received from the Vance family into this foundation. Then, anonymously, I made the first donation to the National Bone Marrow Registry to fund treatment for impoverished patients who truly needed transplants but couldn't afford them. After doing all this, the heaviest stone in my heart, a remnant of my past life, was finally lifted. Sophia had used fake kindness to benefit herself, while I used the blood money from my enemy's downfall to do real good. Online, people compared the two stories. A false angel had fallen, while I, Ilara, the woman once reviled as a cold-blooded viper, had reshaped my own value amid public praise. A true beacon of light never needs to be defined by others. All the hatred had settled. My world was quieter than it had ever been. Julian didn't have me stay in the guest room any longer. He moved me directly into the master bedroom. He brought in the world's best medical team to help me recover. The chronic pains from my past life, etched into my very soul, slowly began to heal under their meticulous care. After I recovered, I didn't choose a life of leisure. I want to work at Croft Corporation, I told Julian. He was reviewing documents and looked up, not a trace of surprise in his now vibrant eyes. What position do you want? Your assistant. He smiled. My assistant isn't an easy job. I know, I met his gaze, but I have an advantage no one else has. My advantage was the business knowledge I had absorbed as Liam's fiancé, combined with my precise predictions of business trends for the next few years. I joined Croft Corporation. At first, everyone thought I was just a pretty face who had parachuted in because I was Mrs. Croft. That was, until I helped the company avoid a massive investment trap with a pinpoint analysis of an emerging industry, then turned around and acquired the most promising core technology team from that same project. After that, all the whispers of doubt vanished. I was no longer the hate-filled woman who needed his protection. I became his most capable partner, his most in-sync comrade. We attended meetings together, analyzed projects together, and fought side by side at the negotiating table. A single look from him was enough for me to understand his intent. He always saw the core value in the proposals I put forward. That kind of synergy went beyond words. The contract marriage between us was, without us even noticing, torn to shreds. One late night, we had just wrapped up a cross-border acquisition. I was so tired I collapsed onto the sofa when we got home, but he poured me a glass of red wine. Ilara, he said, sitting beside me, looking at me seriously, shouldn't we revise our agreement? My heart skipped a beat. How do you want to revise it? He didn't answer. Instead, he took a velvet box from his pocket and opened it. Inside was a simple but dazzling diamond ring. I want to get rid of the word agreement. His honesty caught me completely off guard. I admit, at first, I approached you to get revenge on the Vance family. I faked my blindness and laid low for years, just waiting for a chance to deliver a fatal blow. Your appearance was an accident, but also the perfect opportunity. But later, everything changed. He took my hand and gently slid the ring onto my finger. It was a perfect fit. I watched you standing before me, trying to hide your anxiety while flawlessly analyzing my medical condition. I watched you use the limited resources I gave you to pull off your first brilliant counterattack. I watched you at the gala, cornering Sophia with just a few words. Ilara, I realized I was falling for you. Not because you were a weapon against the Vances, but because you were you. I even started to get jealous of that idiot Liam, jealous that he ever had you. Before I kicked down that door to the operating room, I was terrified. I was afraid that if I was even a second too late, you would be truly hurt. In that moment, I understood that revenge on the Vances didn't matter anymore. All I wanted was for you to be safe. I love you, Alara. He planned a grand proposal for me, but not for the whole world to see. He booked an entire observatory. That night, there were no guests, no media, just the two of us. Above us was the vast, starry sky, and below us, the glittering lights of the city. He got down on one knee and proposed to me for the second time. Alara, are you willing to entrust your real bright future to me? I looked at the starlight reflected in his eyes. All the pain and grievances from this life and the last vanished in that moment. I nodded forcefully. I am. My life was completely severed from the past. I had broken out of my cocoon and was reborn. I had finally found my new beginning. 3 years later, under my and Julian's joint leadership, Croft Corporation had become an industry giant spanning technology, finance, and biomedicine. I was no longer just a Lara. I was the co-CEO of Croft Corporation, the Miss Croft respected and feared throughout the business world. One day, I was attending an international medical forum. During a break, my assistant handed me a tablet with a news story. The headline read, "Former Golden Boy shows good behavior in prison, may be eligible for reduced sentence." The subject of the article was Liam Vance. The reporter mentioned his good behavior and active participation in labor reform, suggesting he had repented. The article included a recent photo. In it, he wore a blue and white striped prison uniform, his hair shaved short, revealing a pale scalp. He was so thin he was almost unrecognizable, with sunken cheeks and dark hollow eyes. There was no trace of the dashing Vance family heir he once was. The reporter asked him what he regretted most. He looked at the camera, his eyes empty. His lips moved for a long time before he finally whispered, almost in a daze, repeating one name over and over. Alara, I'm so sorry, Alara. His spirit had been completely shattered during the trial 3 years ago. All that was left was a shell of a man, tormented by eternal regret. The article briefly mentioned the fates of the other Vances. His father couldn't handle the shock of the scandal and died in his hospital bed shortly after it broke. His mother, convicted of making threats, spent 2 years in prison. When she got out, her mind was broken. Destitute and alone, she froze to death in a low-income housing unit one snowy winter night, her body not discovered until days later. I calmly closed the news page, feeling not a single ripple in my heart. Their regret, their misery, what did it have to do with me? My new life had long since drawn a clear line from that rotten past. After the forum, I walked out of the conference center to find Julian's car waiting. He opened the door for me and naturally took my briefcase. Tired? I'm okay. I leaned on his shoulder, breathing in his familiar, comforting scent. The car moved smoothly along the city's main artery. Outside the window were the glittering lights of the empire we had built, as brilliant as a galaxy. He took my hand, our fingers intertwining. What are you thinking about? I turned to look at his perfect profile. I'm thinking how lucky I am that I was reborn, that I ripped up that match report, and that I made that call to you. He didn't speak, just squeezed my hand tighter. The car pulled up to our villa on the hill, our home. He held me as we stood before the massive floor-to-ceiling windows, looking down at the city that had become even more prosperous because of us. I rested my cheek against his warm chest. This life, with him, with my career, with a brand new future, this was enough. As for those living in their own hell of regret, let them watch my new life from afar, forever. With one story closed, another was about to begin. One day, my husband suddenly shook me awake. He told me our son had gotten into trouble and needed $80,000 for damages. I froze. What son? We didn't have a son. He said shamelessly, I didn't want you to go through the trouble of a second pregnancy, so I had my secretary have one for me. Even though you didn't give birth to him, he's still your son. I won't treat you unfairly in the future. I slapped him hard across the face. Mark, what in the world did you just say? He grabbed my wrist. Don't be crazy, Claire. Daniel is my son and you're my wife. It's your damn duty to raise him. With that, he slammed the door and left, leaving me shaking. 20 years of marriage, and this is what I get: his casual, entitled betrayal. Later, I made him lose everything. Then he got on his knees and begged me to come back. The next day, I went straight to the police station and slapped our household registration book on the counter. I need you to look up the information on any children registered under Mark's name. The officer looked up at me. I'm sorry, ma'am, but for a non-immediate family member inquiry, we need the guardian's consent. I let out a bitter laugh. He didn't ask for my consent when he demanded money last night, did he? Officer, I'm Mark's legal wife. His child from an affair has gotten into trouble and needs money for damages. Don't I have a right to know the truth? The officers conferred for a moment before pulling up the records. I took the file, my fingers trembling slightly. It clearly showed Mark's name, another woman's name, and their son's birth certificate. My vision went black and I nearly fainted. An officer steadied me, asking with concern, "Ma'am, are you okay?" I forced down my rage. "Thank you. I want to report my husband for bigamy. Also, I need to file to freeze our joint assets." The officer nodded. "Ma'am, please calm down. Even with this report, you still have a responsibility to cooperate with the investigation into this case involving Daniel. Also, do you have any proof of Mark's bigamy?" I was stunned. Isn't this illegitimate child proof enough? The officer shook his head. "No, you need to provide evidence that they lived together as husband and wife, like a marriage certificate, a joint lease, or testimony from neighbors." I walked out in a daze. A second later, my phone rang. Mark's voice was like a death knell. "Where's the money? Give it to me now. 80,000. Don't make me say it again." "I want to see her." "Who?" he asked, confused. "That bitch. If you want the money, bring her to the Starbucks by the entrance. I want to see for myself just how shameless a homewrecker can be." "Claire, I'm warning you. Don't push my buttons." I hung up and let out a long, shaky breath. Just hearing his voice made me want to grab a knife. I looked down at my phone's lock screen, at the smiling face of my daughter, Lily. She has always been so considerate, it hurts. She never asks for extra allowance and wears her school uniform until it's faded, refusing to get a new one. It turns out every penny my daughter and I saved was being used by that bastard to support his other family. I turned and stormed into a jewelry store in the mall, taking out all the emergency savings I had. "Please wrap up these gold bracelets for me, thank you." Holding the heavy bracelets gave me a small sense of security. What kind of life had I been living all these years? Pinching pennies just so that animal could have his fun on the side. When I arrived at the designated Starbucks, I pushed open the glass door and immediately saw Mark next to a woman I assumed was Jessica. She was young and beautiful, with flawless skin. In the reflection, my own weary face stood in stark contrast. When Mark saw me, he dropped her hand like it was electric. "Claire, you're here." I sat down and looked the woman straight in the eye. "So what kind of trouble did your little bastard get into?" The woman's pupils shrank, the smile on her face vanishing. Mark cleared his throat nervously. "Claire, can you keep your voice down? This isn't a good look." His childish reaction told me they probably hadn't done a paternity test yet. He took a deep breath, his voice barely a whisper. "Claire, I know you're just saying things out of anger, but Daniel's situation can't wait. The other party said if we don't pay in the next 2 days, they're taking legal action." I stirred my coffee slowly. "Since you're so sure he's your son, why don't we get a paternity test first? I happen to know the head of forensics at a top-tier hospital. If we rush it, we can get the results by tomorrow." "No," Jessica blurted out, knocking over her coffee. "Mark, we can't use a hospital she knows. What if she tampers with the report? Let's go to a certified forensics lab ourselves. A proper institution is more reliable." Mark stared at Jessica for a few seconds, then slowly pulled his arm away. "Claire's right. We should get a test. I, Mark, will never raise another man's child." I elegantly picked up my bag. "Then I'll wait for your good news. I'll spend the next couple of days liquidating my investments anyway. 80,000 is no small sum. I need to be sure." As I turned to leave, I heard Jessica's tearful voice behind me. "Mark, you don't suspect me, do you? I've been with you for so many years." The moment the glass door closed, Mark's call came through. Claire, I won't be coming home for a few days. Jessica is a little unstable right now. Can you pack a few changes of clothes for me? I'll come by to pick them up later. I gripped my phone, said nothing, and calmly hung up. When I got home, I went straight to the closet, stuffed all his pilled old t-shirts, faded underwear, and worn-out socks into a travel bag, and left it at the front desk of our building. Then I sent him a text. Your bag is at the front desk. Our daughter is coming home tomorrow. Don't show your face around here. My phone immediately buzzed. Okay, after this is all over, we'll have a good talk. I miss our daughter too. I stared at the screen and sneered. You miss her? You don't deserve to. I immediately started taking pictures of all of Mark's prized possessions he'd collected over the years. Limited edition stamps, watches, gold bars, sneakers, and expensive liquor. And listed them on eBay and Facebook Marketplace. Oh, and his computer and DSLR camera, both at half price. Within half an hour, buyers were flocking. After the valuable items were gone, I started selling off his leather jackets, trench coats, and belts. Even his down jackets, thermal underwear, tank tops, and boxers were all photographed and listed. At this point, I can basically accept his responsibility for the illegitimate child, but it will have to be paid for with your personal property, I muttered to myself. After 3 days of selling off most of his personal belongings, I finally had enough money, with some to spare. Through the boy's birth certificate, I also found out the reason for the compensation. The 6-year-old was setting off firecrackers in the neighborhood and blew up a neighbor's Mercedes. Luckily, no one was hurt, but the damages really did come to $80,000. 6 years old. The number made me see black. That means Mark's affair had been going on for a full 7 years, starting right when our daughter began middle school. If this kid keeps causing trouble, will I still be responsible? I was now sitting in my friend's law office. My friend pushed up her glasses. During a marriage, a spouse's debts are considered joint responsibility, so you can't avoid it. Then if something happens to my daughter, will that other woman be held responsible? Unfortunately, no. She's not bound by marriage law. In fact, legally, the affair gives her more freedom. How ironic. The loyal person is bound by responsibility while the perpetrator gets off scot-free. This marriage has given me nothing but scars and a piece of paper that could saddle me with huge debts at any moment. How am I supposed to protect my daughter's future? 3 days later, my phone rang before dawn. Mark's voice was filled with unconcealed excitement. Claire, the test results are in. Daniel is my son. Our family has an heir. You don't have to worry anymore. I bit my lip so hard I tasted blood. Is that so? Then let's meet and talk. You have the money ready, right? He asked tentatively. Don't worry, it's ready. I hung up, my heart a mix of emotions. In 20 years of marriage, every penny in our account was saved through my careful budgeting. Ever since Mark started his own business a few years ago, the money he brought home had dwindled to almost nothing. When our daughter was in high school, she took the bus to save on transportation costs. And now this scumbag was shamelessly demanding the savings my daughter and I had scraped together to bail out another woman's child. How could someone so shameless exist? We met at Starbucks again. The first thing Mark did was demand I transfer the money to his account. I stirred my coffee, looking calmly at the two of them. The money isn't an issue, but we need to be clear about this child's custody. What custody issue? Mark frowned. Jessica instantly tensed up. Daniel is only 6, and he's already caused this much trouble. Clearly, my dear Jessica here is struggling with parenting. As the legal wife, I'm willing to adopt the child and raise him for you. Jessica screamed, What? Are you out of your mind? Adopt him? Who the hell do you think you are? I ignored her outburst and looked at Mark. You only think of me when your illegitimate son gets in trouble. You need to show some sincerity here. Jessica panicked, grabbing Mark's sleeve. Honey, Daniel is my life. You promised you'd always protect us. I swear I'll be a better mother to him. Mark wrung his hands. Claire, can we talk about this after the kid is out of... No. I cut him off sharply. If you insist on maintaining 2 families, that's bigamy. For our daughter's sake, I can let the past go, but Daniel's upbringing is critical. What if next time he blows up a gas station instead of a car? I smiled slightly. Mark, you're 48. If that happens, how will you pay? With your life? Jessica's face went white. No, there won't be a next time. I'll watch him closely. This time I was just careless. You were careless because you had a mahjong game scheduled with your friends, right? Jessica looked at me in horror. You've been following me? I waved my hand dismissively. This trash wasn't worth a second of my time. The police told me, it's clear you're incapable of raising a child and can't support yourself. Your education and life experience are miles behind mine. I then looked lovingly at Mark. Honey, thank you for being so considerate of my age and not wanting me to have a second child. So you found this simple-minded bimbo to carry on the family line. I'll forget what happened. You can choose jail time or I adopt the kid. Bang! Jessica kicked back her chair and shot to her feet, screaming, Mark, are you fucking mute? Where's the money? You two were supposed to get a divorce. Get it over with. I raised my eyebrows in mock surprise. A divorce? Why would we get a divorce? Is my six-figure salary not enough to support the family? Or have I not been indulgent enough with you? The entire coffee shop fell silent. Even the espresso machine stopped humming. All eyes were on our little drama. Mark frowned, his voice low. Claire, are you serious? I swirled my coffee, a smile playing on my lips. Of course, so am I fit to be your son's mother? My salary wasn't nearly that high, but I knew Mark too well. On the scales of money versus love, he would always choose money. Sure enough, I saw his eyes start to waver. Jessica was young and beautiful, but her extravagant spending over the past 7 years, plus her son being a bottomless pit, had already worn him down. The 7-year itch was the easiest time to sway him. Smack! Mark suddenly slammed his hand on the table. If you're so rich, then $80,000 should be pocket change for you. I'm asking you one last time. Are you giving me the money or not? Of course. I smiled and opened my banking app. As soon as you sign the adoption papers, the $80,000 will be transferred. Before Jessica could explode, I delivered the final blow. If the child is with me, he can be registered at our address in the top school district. I'll send him to the best international school. When he comes of age, I'll even transfer our 3-bedroom condo to his name. I looked at Jessica. And you? Not only do you get to shed the stigma of being a mistress, but your son gets to be the official heir. After all, you wouldn't want his security clearance to be denied someday because his birth mother was a homewrecker, would you? Jessica's face went pale, her lower lip trembling. How interesting. It turns out that when things get ugly, the person who was betrayed is never the one who panics the most. No wonder my lawyer friend said that the more you want a divorce, the calmer you have to act, or you'll be taken advantage of. Seeing the situation was under control, I took a business card out of my bag and handed it to Mark. This is one of my clients who specializes in loans. If you need money, you can ask him. Not only can he get you the lowest interest rate, but I can also find you a guarantor. With that, I picked up my bag and strode out. I knew that with Mark's cautious nature, he would never use someone I recommended. But I had already laid a trap, feeding his contact information to various loan companies through different channels. Soon, my inside source contacted me. Miss Lee, the situation doesn't look good. Mr. Wyatt has already mortgaged all his available assets. Getting a $3 million loan might be difficult. $3 million? The number made my pupils shrink. But then I realized he wouldn't be taking such a huge risk in revealing his secret son if he weren't completely desperate. I laid out the next part of my plan. Try to convince him to transfer our joint properties into our daughter's name. That way, as her guardian, he'll have the right to mortgage her property. Tell him the largest house can be mortgaged for $5 million, and try to quote high on the others, too. My friend paused for a moment. Okay, I understand. For the past few years, Mark had been trying to mortgage the 3 properties we owned, but unfortunately for him, my name was on all the deeds. Without my signature, he couldn't get a loan. Now, I was giving him a chance to use our daughter as a pawn. The loan trap was set. Let's see if he'd risk it all for a big payoff. Around 10 p.m., a message from Mark popped up. Honey, I'll be home later to discuss the adoption. I have to put on a show during the day or she'll make a scene. I replied emotionlessly, Okay, I'll wait for you, and turned on the home security cameras. Less than half an hour later, he rushed in and hugged me tightly. Honey, I'm so sorry for what you've been through these past few days. If it weren't for Daniel's trouble, I wouldn't be spending any time with her. It was just a moment of weakness. You and our daughter are the only ones in my heart. You have to believe me. I watched his performance silently, feeling his slightly ragged breath. After a moment, he continued. I've thought it over. Daniel's problems shouldn't affect you. Jessica and I will figure out the 80,000 ourselves. But Lily is my daughter too, and I want to transfer the houses to her name as compensation. What do you think? I suppressed my excitement and feigned being moved. As long as you still care about this family, our daughter and I will always be here waiting for you. Mark, relieved, was about to open the closet when his phone buzzed. He glanced at the screen and quickly grabbed his jacket. Something urgent came up at the office. Remember to pick up our daughter tomorrow. I'll see you at the property registration office. I smiled as I watched him leave. It seemed he couldn't wait another minute. Funny, neither could I. The next day, we were at the property office on time. I had gotten the earliest appointment, and all the transfers would be done in half an hour. The second the paperwork for the third house was complete, his phone rang. He glanced at it, then grabbed the 3 new deeds. There's a situation at the office. I have to go handle it. Thanks for your help. Before he finished speaking, he was out the door. I watched his hurried retreat with a cold smile. The climax of this play was finally here. I had edited a video of his heartfelt confession from last night, along with photos from the property transfer, and sent it all to Jessica. I was sure no mistress could tolerate the man she'd spent 7 years with swearing he never loved her in front of his wife. Mark might have thought it was just an act, a means to an end, but in Jessica's eyes, it was a blatant betrayal. She thought she was free from the constraints of marriage, free to do as she pleased, but she didn't realize that because of that very marriage certificate, every penny she had spent over the years was considered joint marital property. I could, at any time, use the law to reclaim the wealth that rightfully belonged to me and my daughter. That was the unbridgeable gap between a wife and a mistress. Afterward, I took my daughter's hand and filed a lost property report at the county recorder's office. The original deeds in Mark's possession were now void. After safely dropping my daughter off at school, I went to a real estate agent downstairs and started the process of selling the houses. That's right. Mark wanted to mortgage our daughter's properties, but I was going to sell them for her. As expected, Mark called me that night, his voice a roar. Claire, what's the meaning of those photos you sent Jessica? Are you trying to push photos? I feigned confusion. I was just sharing some warm family moments. Is she being a little too sensitive? Claire, just give me a little more time, I promise. I calmly cut off his empty promise. Mark, haven't you gotten tired of acting all these years? There was a stunned silence on the other end. What? What do you mean by that? I mean, it's time for you to act like a man and take responsibility. Give Jessica the legitimate status she deserves. Don't let your child live in the shadows forever. You want a divorce? His voice shot up, filled with disbelief. After all, I had been so calm and forgiving lately. He must have thought I'd forever be his doormat. He had no idea my patience was solely for the sake of those 3 houses. Tomorrow, you'll receive a special gift. With those final words, I hung up. This carefully planned hunt was finally coming to a close. But I never expected that Jessica would beat me to the punch and sue me first. As Daniel's guardian, she filed a lawsuit accusing me of maliciously misappropriating marital assets and preventing Mark from fulfilling his child support obligations. When I received the summons, I had to laugh. A homewrecker was now standing on the moral high ground, using the law against the legal wife. My hand holding the papers trembled, not from fear, but from the sheer audacity. In this game, I had underestimated my opponent's depravity. In court, Jessica cried her eyes out. Your Honor, my son is only 6 years old and he can't even get basic child support. The defendant, as Mark's legal wife, has been controlling the family's finances and has even forced my son to drop out of school. She presented a stack of transfer records, claiming the money Mark had given her over the years was pitifully small. I looked coldly at Mark. From the witness stand, he didn't hesitate to stab me in the back. My wife has always hated this child. The money I've given them over the years, I had to save from my own lunch money. The next moment, the courtroom doors opened and their son, Daniel, was led in. He was wearing an ill-fitting old-school uniform and stood timidly beside the plaintiff's table. Jessica suddenly dropped to her knees, hugging the child and sobbing. "It's all my fault, all of it. But the child is innocent. Your Honor, please give him a chance to live." A murmur went through the courtroom. The elderly judge pushed up his glasses, his gaze now turning skeptical towards me. Just as the situation was about to spiral out of control, my lawyer, a sharp woman, rose to her feet. Her voice was calm and powerful. "Your Honor, not every woman who gives birth deserves the sacred title of mother. The plaintiff, as the destroyer of a marriage, is the root cause of all the suffering her son has endured through her own immoral actions. In response to the plaintiff's false accusations, we need to clarify two facts. First, upon learning that her son caused an accident requiring $80,000 in damages, my client immediately liquidated all her available assets to raise the funds. Second, the reason for the delayed payment is the discovery of the plaintiff's severe negligence as a guardian. That a 6-year-old child could cause such significant damage is deeply concerning regarding his upbringing. Your Honor, true motherly love should build a moral fortress for a child, not push them into an abyss of indecency. Therefore, we formally request that the court initiate a custody evaluation and grant custody of Daniel to a more suitable guardian." "Bullshit!" Jessica screamed. "Who the hell do you think you are? You're about to get divorced. Why should you get custody?" "The plaintiff will maintain order in the court," the judge snapped, banging his gavel. "Counsel for the defense, please continue." My lawyer calmly arranged her files. "Your Honor, it's clear that disputes in a marriage are inevitable, especially when one discovers a 7-year affair and is suddenly faced with a massive debt. My client has shown incredible restraint. In fact, not only are we not suing the plaintiff for destroying a marriage, but we are grateful for her care of Mr. Wyatt these past 7 years. As for the $80,000 in damages, we have a check ready to be paid directly to the owner of the damaged vehicle with one condition, that the plaintiff signs over her guardianship rights." She then presented a document to the court. "These are certificates showing my client's daughter, Lily, has been an honor roll student for 12 consecutive years. Compared to the plaintiff's son's record of vandalism, it's clear who is the better parent." The judge took off his reading glasses and tapped his knuckles on the bench. "In the end, we won. A Child Protective Services team was quickly formed to evaluate custody. The child was temporarily placed with Mark's mother, and the plaintiff was required to attend weekly parenting classes. The moment the gavel fell, Jessica slumped in her seat, and Mark's face was ashen. I knew they wanted my money, but I was different. I wanted their lives. Soon, Daniel was sent to live with Mark's mother. The old-fashioned woman's parenting style was completely out of step with modern methods. She refused to turn on the air conditioning on a 100-degree day, causing Daniel to collapse from heat stroke due to severe dehydration. On the way to the hospital, she also fainted from exhaustion at the emergency room entrance. Mark was then forced to shuttle between two patients. Surprisingly, just 3 days later, he brought the still-recovering Daniel to my doorstep. When I opened the door, Mark's face was openly defiant. "You wanted a son, didn't you? Now you have one. I hope you'll treat Daniel with the same care you gave Lily." The moment Daniel stepped inside, he started knocking over everything in the living room, spitting on the hardwood floors, stomping on the sofa with his outside shoes, and even grabbing an object to scratch the walls. Mark leaned against the doorframe, giving me a smug thumbs up. "Boys should be wild. That's a true heir to our family. As my wife, you have to learn to tolerate my child." I nodded slightly, my voice calm. "Don't worry, I'll teach him well." As he swaggered away, I quietly locked the door, turned around, and spread out the few remaining boxes of Mark's personal belongings on the floor. I said gently to the little boy, "These are all your daddy's treasures. You can play with them however you want." That night, I sent photos of Daniel's masterpieces to Mark. He went insane. His custom-tailored suits were in shreds. His dress shirts were soaking in a bucket of acrylic paint. His prized Gundam models were dismantled, and a set of expensive, unsold teapots was at the bottom of the fish tank, sharing the water with the tropical fish. As expected, 3 seconds later, my screen started flashing wildly. I calmly switched my phone to silent. When the smart lock opened, Mark froze in the doorway, his eyes wide with disbelief at the wreckage. His hand trembled as he pointed. You can't even control a child. What's the point of you being alive? Without another word, he grabbed Daniel and slapped him several times. I quickly stepped between them and handed him a brochure. Hey, don't take it out on the kid. Why don't we send him to a behavioral boot camp? This place specializes in troubled kids. No child is a lost cause once they get there. That night, Mark drove Daniel to the camp. The next morning, Daniel woke up in a strange place and immediately used his watch phone to call Jessica, crying for help. When she heard, Jessica gathered her friends and family and started screaming insults outside my apartment building. Meanwhile, Mark, the mastermind behind it all, hid at home, too afraid to show his face. The time was right. It was my turn to act. I immediately reported the disturbance to the police and formally filed a lawsuit against Jessica, demanding she return every cent Mark had spent on her. I had held back before because I knew she would use the child as a shield to gain public sympathy. But this time, I was going for the jugular, leaving her no room to recover. When Mark showed up again, he was greeted by a password-incorrect message on the door. He frantically called my phone, his voice hysterical. Claire, why are strangers living in our house? I sighed wearily. It's our daughter's house. She's an adult now. She has the right to do what she wants with her property. There was a long pause on the other end. This father, who had missed his own daughter's coming-of-age ceremony, was only now realizing he had walked right into my trap. Claire, let's talk this over. His voice suddenly softened. Just drop the lawsuit against Jessica. She can't. Too late. I cut him off and sent him photos of our daughter's early admission letter to a top university, her international academic summer camp certificate, her trust fund agreement, and her civil service exam preparation plan. This is the kind of life a responsible parent plans for their child. And you? What have you given her all these years besides betrayal and lies? When I managed to get all this carefully compiled information into Jessica's hands, the woman finally snapped. She handed over all her evidence and sued Mark for bigamy and embezzlement, aiming to destroy my daughter's future and end her path to a government career. And at that moment, I let out the smile I had been suppressing for so long. Yes, this was the checkmate I had been waiting for. I wasn't holding on to any lingering feelings for Mark, nor was I unable to prove his bigamy. It's just that I had a daughter, and I needed someone else to take the fall for me. As Mark was being led away, he looked back at me, his eyes filled with disbelief. In court, I pulled out the divorce papers I had prepared long ago. Mark cried and begged me. We were married for so long. Can't you show some mercy? I smirked and pushed the agreement in front of him. Sign it. Behave yourself in prison, and when you get out, you can give Jessica the status she deserves. Don't you fucking mention her name to me. She's a bitch. Claire, I swear I never loved her. I looked at him calmly and placed the pen on the papers. Mark, our 20 years of marriage ended the moment you betrayed me. Seeing my mind was made up, Mark dropped the act. My assets are gone and I'm drowning in debt, but your 6-figure salary, by law, you have to give me half. I unhurriedly pushed the trust fund documents across the table. Unfortunately, all my assets have been transferred into our daughter's trust, and they are not subject to division. Her life is already set, so why would she need a government job? Besides, she's 18 now and no longer needs a guardian. As for you, you spent all these years focused on your secret family, and now you want to split the assets my daughter and I worked so hard for? Where do you get the nerve? Finally, under Mark's stunned gaze, I got my justice. Jessica, consumed by jealousy, had lost her mind and lost the game completely. And Mark's debts, which were not incurred for our family, were, of course, no longer my problem. Although the road to recovering the assets was long, justice was served. After a court-ordered enforcement, Jessica was forced to return everything that had never belonged to her. When the moving truck unloaded a mountain of luxury goods, I couldn't help but cry. In 20 years of marriage, I had owned less than a tenth of what was in front of me. I efficiently photographed everything and listed it on secondhand platforms. The gold jewelry was melted down to become part of my daughter's future. The property registered under Jessica's name was also heading to a judicial auction. With the divorce finalized, Daniel's custody legally reverted to his birth mother. As the notary delivered the final property division certificate, I let out a soft sigh. The battle was finally over, but the peace only lasted for 2 years. One morning, a police officer and an 8-year-old boy knocked on my door. I opened the door and froze. The officer confirmed my identity. "Hello, Miss Lee. This child's mother has gone missing." I looked down at Daniel standing next to the officer, unsure how to react. "So, why did you bring him to my house?" The officer sighed. "This is the 6th time in 2 years she's abandoned him in a public place. This time, it was at the train station. Under child protection laws, he has to be temporarily cared for by his next of kin." "Next of kin?" I sneered. "Sorry, his next of kin is in prison." "But," the officer hesitated, "Mark is his biological father, and your daughter, as his half-sister, has a legal obligation to help." "What?" my daughter and I exclaimed at the same time. This was absurd. I looked down at the 8-year-old boy. The arrogance was gone from his eyes, replaced by a timid fear. It seemed he had been through a lot in the past 2 years. Finally, I sighed and stepped aside. Since my daughter was home from college, I decided to take both kids to see their father. Through the glass, Mark's eyes widened when he saw the three of us. "How could you?" I rubbed my temples wearily. "Your precious Jessica has disappeared, and now the responsibility of raising Daniel has fallen on our daughter. As his half-sister, she has to take care of him, but she's only 20 years old." "Ha ha! Payback! This is payback!" Mark suddenly interrupted me, his face contorting as he banged on the glass. "Claire, you vicious woman! After what you did to me and Jessica, it's finally your turn. Daniel, don't be afraid. Let her throw whatever fit she wants. Daddy's got your back." I watched his hysterical display and shook my head. 2 years in prison hadn't taught him a thing. I gestured for my daughter to take Daniel outside, then sat back down, a knowing smile on my lips. "Mark, you've misunderstood. I came today to tell you some good news. I'm getting married." With that, I elegantly pulled a gold-embossed invitation from my bag. My fiancé is a director at a major corporation. Unfortunately, he can't have children, so it's a good thing I have a ready-made son to help me marry into a wealthy family. I was originally going to tell you that I'm changing Daniel's last name, but on second thought, I don't think I need your permission. I stood up and smoothed my dress. After all, I have custody. A torrent of curses and furious banging came from behind the glass. I walked out without looking back. Soon after, the prison called. Mark had submitted a request for a reduced sentence on the grounds that he needed to fulfill his parental duties. I scoffed and hung up. Sure enough, when he learned I was starting the process of changing Daniel's last name, the selfish man finally panicked. He was granted early parole. After his release, Mark searched for us like a headless chicken. When he couldn't find us, he went to the police station to report me for illegally taking a minor. In the mediation room, the officer pushed Daniel's custody papers in front of me. "Miss Lee, according to legal procedure, you need to complete the custody transfer." I promptly signed the papers and walked out of the station without a second glance. What he had fought so hard to get, I genuinely didn't want. A year later, I happened to hear about Mark from an old friend. After a great deal of effort, he had found Jessica, only to discover she was holding another baby. It turned out she had gone back to her old ways, destroying another family. But this time, she'd picked the wrong guy. The man disappeared after she gave birth to a daughter. With nowhere else to go, Jessica went back to Mark. Perhaps afraid of repeating the past, the two of them rushed to City Hall to get married. But married life was far from the paradise she had imagined. Mark despised the child who had no blood relation to him. The man who once doted on Jessica now constantly berated her and her daughter. Neighbors said they often heard a baby crying and a woman sobbing late at night. One rainy night, I ran into Jessica buying instant noodles at a pharmacy. She was holding a feverish baby girl, her clothes a far cry from their former glamour. When she saw me, she instinctively turned away and ran out into the rain with the child. Watching her pathetic figure disappear, I suddenly remembered the arrogant young woman in Starbucks all those years ago. Fate sometimes is the best storyteller.